Welcome back, DVFFL. It is 2025. This season has begun, and it is week 1. We're post-draft. We have clarity, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. We're going to stay curious as we go through the season, as this is the first episode of the Podly Weekly. This is our draft love-hate episode where, well, we'll see if everything, as Steele says during the draft, it's all going according to plan. This week, we're going to try to make this quick as a top rundown, as I pretty much assume by the time this episode comes out and the time that you all listen to it, that rosters will change very quickly. As we know, we keep these things locked until today, and the rosters are now open for waivers and claims like that, so the regular run starts to begin. But here we are. I wanted to make sure that we got an episode out there judging how well the draft went. And boy, does the draft teach some lessons. Every draft, there's always a different theme as to what is to be expected, or as to what is the theme of what people want to draft. And this one taught us some lessons. Before we get into that, I definitely want to do a bit of a recap from an emotional, human standpoint of the draft. What an incredible draft it really was. I didn't want to save this for the end, because I think it all deserves a big kind of round of applause wherever you are. What an amazing weekend it was with you all. The house was incredible. I think as time was going on, and by time I mean each day passed, I was like, as people were talking about it, that might be the best house we've ever stayed at. Walk ball was iconic. I don't think we can ever live up to that again, just with the lighting setup, the weather. It was perfect. I mean, truly perfect. And I find it an absolute testament to be with you all. And we continue to have these very special drafts with these very special moments. And I feel like walk ball is going to be going down with the Austin Thunderstorm as just one of those things that we're all going to remember. The Prineville lawn playing the game. There's just these moments in time that are truly like fleeting, small bits of time where I cannot complain. I have nothing to say other than that was a blast. And getting to spend it with like 14, 15 of my best buds is fantastic. 15th being apparently the ghost of all of the other people that are there with us, but definitely 14 of my best buds is just the best. So a testament to you all. I hope everyone got home safe. What an amazing weekend overall. I can't wait to do it again. So the countdown begins. We're only 363 days away from the start of that draft. But yeah, for now, we have to focus on the thing that we all drafted for, the thing that we traveled across the country or down the country for, and that is this fantasy football season, which is now about to begin, and it starts with a draft. So today, we're going to walk through some just top notes of what the draft was like, and then I have a third-party grading system to see how everyone did on the draft, and I will talk more about that as we get to it. This is the same grading system I've been using for the last couple of years for this same kind of episode. So as you can expect, this is just an annual tradition that we are going through, and it's time to get into it. So, like I said, the draft teaches us some lessons. We had teams attempting to wait in the draft, for them to come to them, which is a lesson that I learned last year. It's a really dangerous lesson. I get the mindset. You don't like the prices that you're seeing, and you're thinking there's maybe a better deal for a better price, for a better player and a better price and a couple picks. And then that player comes up, and the price is $4 more than you expected it to be, and it was $5 more than the last guy that you really liked. So now you have one less guy left in your tier, whatever tier that might be, and suddenly you're in a bidding war for something that you may not know that you really wanted that badly, but you feel like you have to because you need to get that talent. And that resulted in several firsts. We had the most expensive quarterback of all time drafted, with Tanner getting Hurts for $41. We had the most expensive wide receiver of all time for getting drafted, with Jesse getting Jamar Chase for $62. We had the most expensive defense of all time being drafted, with Cal getting the Broncos D for $12. And we had the most expensive kicker of all time, with myself getting Aubrey for $7. Each one of these things falls into different camps. Some of these were based on strategy of cooking up the books and seeing how far someone would be willing to go, and others come from absolute necessity of wanting a positional advantage from both the Broncos defense and the kicker. And also, I guess for that matter, Jamar Chase. I mean, $62 for Jamar Chase. I don't think that's one of those ones that anyone really mentioned any time during the weekend of like, ooh, that was a lot. But it was a lot. It's a lot. That's running back money right there. So, those are some lessons that to be taught. And I don't know if this is going to be the new norm, so to speak. I think from a defense and kicking perspective, it possibly could be, especially if kickers and defenses deliver the same point return as they have, as that's becoming kind of a top of mind topic for us. Potentially this could be the world where we live in, where you have to kind of mentally budget, maybe up to $10 on a defense if you want a good one, and if you don't care, you get $1. I mean, at least that world exists, and there's not like there's a world where we're going to be drafting multiple defenses like running backs, but maybe we're in a new world with that. With quarterbacks, it's hard to say. Again, that market was determined for $33. I definitely know I was in it. I wanted to be a part of the Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. One of those guys was definitely on my board. $33 seemed a little rich. For some reason, having Josh Allen go $1 more than Lamar, or even more, I guess we could have kept pushing the bill to $34, $35. That seemed a little rich. And then what ended up happening is once Jalen Hurts started screaming past that number, it became a reality in my mind that Tanner really wanted him, and I wanted to see how much he really wanted him for, and that answer was $41. So sometimes you get pressed like that. I think at the end of the day, my general message to all these prices and all the things that I'll be talking about in this episode, which is why this episode probably has the shortest shelf life out of all the episodes that I do, all of this stuff will just eventually not matter, because once the bullets start flying in week one, you're really not going to think about, wow, that's a $40 player right there. But you are going to think about those players that you didn't end up getting because they cost you $2 fake more than you anticipated them to. And we'll look down the line as a lot of teams left a lot of money on the table. And a lot of money, honestly, in fantasy could be $6. I mean, some of these teams are making $6 to $10 work for core positions. So I think, that money matters. But the last thing you're going to be thinking on week one, as you're starting a player that you're not a big fan of, and you're thinking, I really wish I spent the $3 extra more on this starter. That really could have made a difference for me, because it really won't matter as soon as the actual games start to play. But the general theme here is that guys want to get their guys, and that happened. It's extended into keepers too. I think generally there was no surprises. I think if anyone had to say anything had to be a surprise, if you had to say there was a surprise, I think there was some talk about Red not taking McBride instead of Tracy. But at the end of the day, the Tracy still has value. He's a cheaper value and allowed Red to probably have more money to do something more than he wanted to do. I was talking with, I think, Dill about this. I did a bit of a price audit on generally what the cost analysis is for QBs and tight ends. Especially we spend a lot of money on them and they have a really high variance. And one of the things that was really interesting is that, last year, as an example, in 2024, the average price for a QB was coming in at the $14 end for a starting QB, with the high being 25 and the low being 2. And then coincidentally, you go into the tight end cost that same year, the average price for a tight end was $9 within the league, but we had a high watermark of $32 and a low watermark of $1. Why I'm bringing this up is that the lowest end QB score from last year was let me pull that up as I talk. The lowest end QB score last year was the Stroud experience with Brandon, who spent 10 plus on Stroud. He had 228 points, and he finished 14th in QB scoring. That is still 35 points more than tight end. And that's the best case scenario, which Brandon had, 185 points from George Kittle last year from the tight end position. That's an outlier. I mean, 185 points is an outlier. The average last year for the league was around 105 points. So we were spending, my point being, we spend so much money. On average, we are spending a high watermark much higher on tight end for a position that delivers at times not even a third of the value of the quarterback position, all looking for a positional advantage. Past years since 2024, high watermarks for tight ends, $43, $36, and $49. High watermarks for QBs in that same 3-year span from 2023 to 2021. 2023, $39, $20, and $30. I don't understand where the fallacy is. I think everyone's trying to search and get the high-end tight end. It's the positional advantage. But the fact is, there might be one or two of those guys that exist, and I think that this year's draft really highlighted that difference. I think we only had 2 tight ends literally go over the $10 mark. Every other tight end selected, other than Kittle and McBride, was less than $10. That feels more like on-brand pricing for a position that barely delivers the same level of positional value. It's the least efficient point getting and the least efficient dollar spent is on the tight end position. But that's just nut dropping some draft strategy for you all to remember next year. After the selections, after these keepers going back on track, we had a top 3 budget getters of Mitch, myself, and Jaden, which was kind of interesting because I think Jaden and Mitch came in with the big budgets because Jaden took, Jaden Daniels. That budget shrinks. So this year, going back fully on track after my little tangent on tight end and QB scoring, we're going to look down each team on the annual part, these power rankings of the league. This is a third-party site that factors in, that's completely tailored to our settings. This includes scoring settings, like all of the nuances of our scoring settings, schedules, and it factors in depth in addition to starters. The big problem with like Fantasy Pros when they do their power rankings is that it kind of gives you a general vagueness of like 14-man standard is all it looks into. It doesn't really factor in schedule between those teams, which this third-party site that I'm using actually goes week by week and projects out based on their own projections in an aggregate. In addition to that, Fantasy Pros doesn't really factor in depth of the bench at all. It just kind of looks generally at starters. So teams that have like a stacked starting lineup, which obviously is very helpful in fantasy but not great for long-term value, will always win out in power rankings on Fantasy Pros in comparison to other places such as Reality. So last year, these same rankings produced a top 3 score ranking of Dill, Alec, and Cal. The real finish of those 3 teams last year, Dill finished 4th, Alec finished 3rd, and Cal finished 1st. So pretty good judgment, even though there's a lot of turnover within both those teams. The last year's bottom 3 rank of these rankings last year was 12th Jesse, 13th Mitch, and 14th Brian. The real finishes of those teams was Jesse finished 6th, Mitch finished 13th, which is exactly as he was projected, and Brian finished 9th. In both of those cases, I think Jesse's an outlier within that space. Brian was damn close. I mean, his team was basically falling apart. He got that flex seating win. I think there's a chance that didn't happen. He probably would have kind of come close to a similar ranking that the projection was for. So with that said, let's go through the 2025 post-draft rankings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break every team into tiers. These tiers are basically delineated by the points per game average that is expected of these teams. Some teams are kind of grouped closer together, truly being within a tenth of a point off, or in actually one case, 2 teams are exactly tied, which is kind of crazy. So I've broken them into tiers. I think we have 5 tiers. In addition to that, I will name off the amount of money that they had post-keeper, so you can kind of get a general sense of like, did they maximize their money? A good way to look at it, the way that I'm looking at it, is if they are first in cash, they should, in theory, be first in post-draft rankings. So if their ranking is higher than the amount of cash that they have, that means that they generally had a pretty good draft. However, if their ranking is below the amount of cash rank that they had, that's not as efficient of a draft. In some cases, it may not fully matter considering it's a couple of tenths off, but I think it's a good litmus test as you see kind of the big disparities. If it's like 1 or 2 positions off, I don't think you can say, well, that was a terrible draft. You weren't very efficient. But if it's like a full 4 or 5, spaces off from where your draft cash amount was, let's say you were a top 5 draft, you had the top 5 amount of draft cash, but you're finishing in these power rankings in the bottom 10, bottom 4 spots, that's probably not a very efficient draft. And in addition to that, not only just saying the rankings, I'm also going to say a player that I love or players that I love and something that I hate. And that could be a player that I hate, a strategy that I hate, something like that. I'll generally try to keep these pretty quick because there is quite a bit to go through. So in the name of quickness, let us proceed. The 2025 post-draft rankings, according to this third-party site, which I will not name, starts with Tier 1. No surprise, number 1 team. It's me. It's me. It's me. I'm projected for 100.4 points per game. I had the second most cash with $228 post-keeper. This matches up with the general sentiment coming out of the room. This matches up with the general sentiment of the game. And now it's lined up once again with an analytical report. And if you wanted a fourth reason why I agree, it's because I'm me and I agree. I think I had a great draft. The thing that I really love about my draft is the Mahomes-Kelce combo. I understand that there's a lot of trepidation about Kelce. Obviously, he went for the lowest price he's ever gone for which was $8. But this pair has been one of the top of their position class for over the last 5 years. In fact, the previous most expensive quarterback of all time in our league was Mahomes for $39, and that was 2 years ago, drafted by Mike. And Kelce has never been drafted for sub $10. Yet the combo of the two are basically coming in at the price of what one would cost, and even one would be like half price, especially if we're talking about Kelce. When I was listing off some of those tight end high watermarks and prices, those were all related to Kelce, usually being in the 40s. But getting Mahomes and Kelce for both $22, fucking great. And we'll see what happens there. What I don't love is overspending on fringe bench players. And I think Cal said it best, especially when I got Bateman for $2. I just don't know why I did that. These are players that potentially could be on the bench. Not on the bench. These could be on the waiver wire any minute now. Those being Bateman for $2, Burden for $4, and Seahawks for $2. Small things like this and the efficiency of how I'm trying to run my budgets really took me out of some tier jump kind of players. I mean, this is an extra $5 that I kind of spent because I spent an extra $1 on Bateman, extra $3 on Burden, extra $1 on Seahawks. If I didn't do it on that and I could have spent my money on other players that I was more comfortable dropping or didn't have to spend more money on drop players, I maybe was able to jump up to another tier. An extra $5 could push me into maybe getting a Lamar Jackson and not have to worry about so much of this. So a little kicking myself on that because I'm really not fully in love with any of these players, but here I am. However, I'm sure you'll hear in a few weeks as each one of these players reveal themselves how in I am on Bateman, Burden, and Seahawks. I think if you had to give my betting odds on that, I think I'm a little bit more in on the Seahawks. Burden is second and Bateman is third. However, if Bateman has a killer week 1, you best believe I'll be preaching and teaching about that. That's tier 1. That's a tier all to myself. It's me, 100 points. Tier 2 is Red. He has a projected point per game of 97.74. He had a budget of $217, which was 4th. So as you can tell, here's a great example. He's 2 spots higher than his budget projected him to be. He should have the 4th best team because he had the 4th most money. It's just a very simple 1-to-1, and he's improved on that. A big reason why, I love the pick of Njoku for 6. I think Njoku is one of those top 4, top 5 tight ends, but definitely can be creeping into the top 4. And there's a world where Flacco and that offense continues to stay as pass heavy as it did last year. Njoku is going to deliver big time value, as I don't really believe that you can say Jerry Jeudy is the alpha, nor can I believe that Tillman is the alpha as well. And there's a world where Njoku certainly is. As long as he stays healthy, that's a great pick, and I could see Njoku definitely being a top 3 tight end by the end of the season. A pick I hate, and I know that Red has defended this for a while. I just don't get DeAndre Swift for $31. He's a starting running back, yes. This feels like I had to, that Red had to bid for necessity because there was a teardrop and he didn't really want to fight with it. But Swift has never delivered top 10 running back value. And I'm not saying that $31 represents top 10 running back, results. But for $4 more, you can get James Conner. And I feel like James Conner has a world in which he could finish as a top 10 running back because, well, he has. He has at least twice. And last year he finished 11th. But as for DeAndre Swift, his best finish ever was 15th in Detroit. I guess you could point to the idea that was with Ben Johnson, I think. I don't remember. But either way, 15th, and you're spending $31 on a player who I think in the previous years was never drafted for more than whatever Brian would pay is usually what he was. And I don't think anyone was really bidding up on Swift. I'm not entirely sure why his situation has suddenly become so expensive that he needs to be drafted for $31. The next team in Tier 2 is Jaden. He has a projected points per game of 97.56. If you're keeping score at home, that's about 0.2 of a point behind Red. He had the 3rd most amount of money with $220. So he's basically right on his marks. Players that I love Deebo Samuel for $12. I'm not the biggest fan of Deebo. I think he's very injury prone, but for $12, I'll take that risk, especially as Jaden has Jaden Daniels. You really can't ask for more, and especially if Deebo's doing more of the usual Deebo things, like if they line him up in the backfield, which There's a world where I can totally see that. The coaching staff has talked about doing some weird and funky things. Weird and funky things doesn't mean starting Bill. It also means that Debo could be running back there as well. So I like that. What I don't love, though, on this team, and I think it's just a huge overpay, is the Sun God for $50. I know that Jaden loves the Sun God, and I know that Jaden usually budgets about $50 for a player that he loves. He's done this before with, I think, St. Brown. He's done this with CeeDee Lamb, famously, and we're doing it again with St. Brown again. It's not that I don't think that St. Brown can't deliver $50 value. I just think that out of all the years, this is the year where St. Brown has the chance of not being the usual Sun God we're used to, just because there's so much nuance. And it's not just the leaving of Ben Johnson, which does have a pretty massive effect in my opinion, because the offense was kind of a traditional offense, but what he did with St. Brown is the most intriguing part of that Detroit Lions offense. I guess the second most intriguing thing is what he does with tight ends. But Jameson Williams on the outside is just an outside receiver at the end of the day. It's just the uniqueness of St. Brown. I just don't know if we're going to get the offensive play caller of whoever the new OC is, like Morton is his name, is going to do the same thing with St. Brown. And I would hope that out of any years that you'd want to get someone like St. Brown, you could get a discount. In my mind, St. Brown was someone I was trying to get for $36 and just be like, wow, if he becomes something, this could be a great deal. But for $50, a little buyer's remorse. The next team in Tier 2, joining Red and Jaden, is Brandon. He has a projected score of 97.04, and he had a budget of $183, which was 9th in the league. Brandon is truly one of the highest risers of this, and honestly, if you look at his draft, I know those players have some scars and people aren't really a big fan of it. He did some pretty good shit. One of the players I love, and you have to love him, and I honestly don't see why. We're going to talk about a couple players. DeAndre Swift is one of them. Bryce Hall. I keep doing this. I've listened back to myself say Bryce Hall so many times. Breece Hall for $20 is a great deal. You don't have to buy in on any of the Jets, but at the same time, you're getting a starting running back that we know is talented, that has delivered incredible value, and was just last year coming in at one of the top running back, money getters that you could possibly spend your money on. And the biggest thing that has changed is that we've removed the quarterback who doesn't love running plays. We've bolstered the offensive line even more, which is a sneaky good offensive line. We've changed the entire coaching staff away from the garbage that was run post, Rodgers terror. And the team now is more run focused than it ever has been with Justin Fields. The only uncertainty with Hall is the team doesn't maybe have a future with him. They haven't really given him that option of a contract, being a running team. Why not take the chance on Breece Hall? What if he's incredible again and you got him for $20? For $20, we have fucking Ollie Gordon's going for $18. I'll take Breece Hall for $2 more, a guy that we know can actually play. So for Brandon, I think that's just a huge steal. I'm not entirely sure why that happened, and in a lot of ways, I'm kind of kicking myself. Why didn't I just take a fucking chance on $20 for Breece Hall? And then hate. Everyone's going to hate this. I don't really have much to hate on Brandon's team. I go down the line of his draft, and there's not anyone who's egregiously expensive. I'll go through it. Lamar Jackson, $33. Fucking Josh Allen's $33. I'll take Lamar Jackson. He's great. Talking about Breece, Jaylen Warren for $9. He just got named the starter this year. He got an extension on the Steelers. I've been telling people this. I think that he's going to become the pass protector for the preferred running back because he can pass protect. Caleb Johnson is not nearly as good at pass protection as Jaylen Warren. And when you're in Aaron Rodgers' world, you might as well be the running back that can pass protect and stay out there. That might have some value, and he can catch the ball. Tyreek Hill for $28. I don't love the player, but there he is. Kittle for $24, the most expensive tight end, second most expensive tight end. I think he might be the best tight end in the draft. That's a pretty good deal. Xavier Worthy for $20. It's a pretty good deal. Dicker for $4. It's a pretty good deal. Second best kicker in the league for $4. He should be. I was hoping that he was going to go to 5 or 6 just to help my Aubrey thing, but he didn't. Eagles for $6. Stevenson for $9. Brandon Ayuk, you could argue, is kind of a waste because I don't think he's going to play at all, and if he's just going to sit on Brandon's bench for the whole time, sure. I don't know. There's just nothing egregious. I'd be literally nitpicking, which I will nitpick some teams, but this one just doesn't feel worth it. Kendry Miller for $3. Do you really want the running back on the Saints? I don't know, but it's $3, whatever. Brandon did well. And he rounds out the top tier 2. So again, tier 2 is Red, Jaden, and Brandon. Tier 3, Mitch. Projected points per game, 96.71. That is almost 4/10 of a point behind Brandon. He had the most money, $234. So this is definitely one of those points where we're representing a faller. Didn't efficiently use all the most money. And the reason why, I love the players that Mitch has. I think across the board, if I were to look down what he was able to draft, there's a lot of players that I really like Jahmyr Gibbs, Drake London I was really high on. Trey McBride I really like. Cam Little is even fun. If I ignore the price tag on some of the bench players, I like Ollie Gordon. I like the player, at least, or the opportunity. Pacheco, again, $25. I like the player. Not loving the price. But, I love what Mitch did, and there's just a lot of players where you're just kind of like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's going to look good. The thing I hate the most about Mitch's team is that everything is $5 too expensive. This is what happens when you have the most money. He just didn't get any deals like Brandon did. Like Brandon's team just above him represents a team that got just the right place, right time, got the right deals. Mitch's team represents a team that just had all the money in the world, could pay for that little tax that comes with it to get the players that he wants, but it's just a little expensive, a little too expensive, if you ask me. So particularly the players I don't love, Ollie Gordon for 18, just what the fuck? It's just so much money for a player that potentially could deliver Mostert value if we believe that the Dolphins team is the same Dolphins team it was 2 years ago, which it isn't. And then Jerome Ford for 12. And Jerome Ford quite literally could be useless within the next 3 weeks. With the Judkins thing kind of quickly changing, I mean, even since I was lamenting it during Saturday when I'm like, why the fuck would anyone draft him? To suddenly, there's all these positive reports, and it sounds like he's going to even have a chance to play in week 1. Ford for 12 is just burning away money for no reason, because I think that Dylan Sampson could probably be more significant than Ford. The team knows what they have in Ford. I think they're looking for something else. That's why they've drafted 2 running backs in the draft. So having the most expensive out of all of them be the one that probably may not play at all is kind of unfortunate. And that's the world that you have when you have a lot of money. The next team on the list joining Mitch in Tier 3 is Alec. His projected points are 96.6. He had $161, the 11th most money. Again, similar to Brandon, one of the higher risers. And again, a traditional kind of moment for Alec. He continues to do really well in these drafts, even though he doesn't have a lot of money. I'm always curious to find out if Alec ever had a lot of money, what could he do with it? Because at this point, he's really showing that he can kind of manage a team and at least have something functional in a space that everyone might hate it, but he's pretty good at the drafting thing. One of the things that I love about his team, Mark Andrews for $8. Mark Andrews obviously was famously the most expensive tight end last year, had a terrible start to the season because of a car accident. Everyone hated him, basically droppable. Comes back in the second half of the season, scores 11 touchdowns in 8 games. People forget that. And Alec gets Andrews for $8, same price as Kelsey, the lowest price that Andrews has ever been. I'm not entirely sure why the bottom just completely fell out of the tight end market, but there it goes. And if Mark Andrews comes back to the usual Mark Andrews form that we saw from end of last year, that's a huge deal. Also, Isaiah Likely is hurt, has been hurt. That's the only person that has ever threatened him. He's not there right now. So great deal. Alec, the thing I hate, the handcuffs. I hate this in the draft. Dowdle and Corum. You're handcuffing Chuba Hubbard and Kyren Williams. I get the Kyren Williams thing. It's a great situation. I just don't get fucking wasting it's the bench spot lockup of handcuffing your starters, getting your bench players. I think it's wise to do it on one of those running backs just so you always know you have one spot full, but to basically handcuff the whole set, the whole starter set, I don't know. It just basically makes your team so rigid, especially as you go through bye weeks. Those are the players that you probably have to anguish yourself over, do I drop them? They haven't done anything, but I need the security. And then if someone gets them and anything happens to your starter, now you have a lead weight hanging over your head. I don't know what this is going to do for Alec's positioning. I just don't love the theory of doing it this way. It's too much of a headache, and it's not enough of a safety net. Next team on this list in Tier 3 joining Mitch and Alec is Jesse. Jesse's points per game projected is 96.22. Again, that's about 0.4 of a point lower than Alec. He had a budget of 210, which is 5th most, so he's a little underneath that expectation. Player that I love, Tucker Kraft for $8. I think all the injuries to the Packers wide receivers just screams that someone's going to catch the ball. There's also rumors that he's going to be playing kind of a tush-push kind of role for Jordan Love as well. He has that ability. If he gets some rushing scores, they use him in some inventive ways. That's a really great pick. Player that I hate, Marvin Mims for $7. I'll sum it up this way. He's expensive. He's not the number 2 on the team. He's been hurt pretty much all offseason, and he's extremely droppable. Just, I don't know. Not buying the Mims thing. Next, and rounding out the top 8, we have Tanner. Projected points per game, 96.13. That's about 1/10 of a point behind Jesse. He had the 6th most amount of money, $194. So again, similar to Jesse, he's a little below expectation. Player that I love for him, Genty, for $56. I think, obviously, we all knew that he wanted him. It always sucks to have a player that you just like is a good player, getting hype. Everyone knows you want him. He's on your favorite team. And I honestly think that Tanner got him at a good deal. I think there was a world where Genty could have easily gone for $63. And I even still would have been like, well, I mean, that's the price. He's a generational running back. But I think we're going to look back at this in like 2 to 3 weeks if Genty lives up to what he's expected to, the top billing. And when we say, well, that was a little low, we probably could have, gassed up Tanner a little bit more. But don't worry, because the player that he did get gassed up on was Jalen Hurts for $41 and has to be here. It's been talked about all weekend long, but LOL. That's just insane. That's way too much money. Even if he delivers QB1 value, I think he's just going to have that like bad taste in your mouth for the rest of the season. Now we step into tier 4. The top tier, this is 9th. Peyton is the first team in the tier 4. He has projected points per game is 95.33. He had $189, which was 7th most amount of money. So he, again, is also falling under expectation. Or actually, no, yep, he's falling below expectation. Player that I love. I know it's a risk, but for $5, Chris Olave, I mean, what is there to lose? Would you rather have Olave for $5 or Burden for $4? Honestly, I would say Olave for $5. At least you know he's a starter. At least you know he's good. I think Shaheed went for $8, and he just had a major knee surgery, major knee injury last year. And he's the number 2 on a team that is not very good. There's not like any change of the guard I'd expect from Shaheed being the number 1 over Olave. This is like a no harm, no foul pick. Even if Olave has another concussion, which hopefully he doesn't, but even if he's just bad, it's $5. I mean, it's nothing, quite literally nothing. So not a bad steal for Peyton there. Players that I hate, and this is again, a deliberated theme over the weekend. It's injury-prone dudes galore. I know it looks good, and if all these what-ifs become the most positive end of it, then this is like a very dumb argument. But for right now, you got to look at it objectively. Walker, who's hurt currently, never played a full season, had only played 4 practices over the summer. That's crazy. Neighbors, hurt currently, has multiple injury concerns going into it. He's an incredible player. He's had concussion shoulders, and he's got a permanent toe injury, it sounds like. Higgins, who has only played a full healthy season once in 5 seasons, is known to be very injury prone. Achane, hurt currently, is not built to do the takings that he's about to take like he did last year. There's just a world where Peyton's team can kind of quickly fall apart, all because of their own like little stigma around them. So it's just something that you would just think that you'd want to get a safe player here and there. I know that there's immense value, and you got to risk it for the biscuit, as they say. I don't want that biscuit. Number 10 on this list for tier 4 is Cal. Projected points per game, 93.4. That is a full 2 points behind Peyton. He had $146, which was the least amount of money, and he's 10th. So he obviously made the most out of it. And it all starts with the player he selected, CMC for $48. The perfect player for the situation Cal needed. He literally spent a third of his budget on CMC. If it hits, Cal's in business for the rest of the season, which is the kind of risk you have to take when you have no money. I mean, you have to go for it. There is no shame in that. You have to go for it. However, if CMC is truly dead-legged with his Achilles issues, this is the sole reason why this season falls apart, and there's really not much Cal can do. I think last year when Alex sold CMC, though a little low, there's still this idea of like, what is Achilles tendonitis? Like what if he comes back? We saw a little bit of it. Wasn't great, but now we got a whole offseason. If we get another flare-up from CMC or some other injury, I just can't imagine the market for wanting to trade for CMC would be very hot. I think that if Cal sold, it would be at a dirt cheap price, assuming that he's not out for the season, and that's what kind of scares me the most about Cal's team. But I hate Rice for $9. Like, what are we doing here? If Dill can't wait to have him back for the fear that he could torpedo him at 1-5, what makes Cal safe from that exact same thing, but for spending double the asking price as not as a keeper? Like, not only that, 18 for Rice next year doesn't have the same ring to it as 8. Like, this he shouldn't be for this much money. He's not going to play. He also had major knee injuries that also affected his hamstring. I don't have a lot of faith in Rice in general, let alone the suspension. So I don't understand why his price like basically doubled. Now we step into tier 5. So tier 4 was the carries. We had Peyton and Cal there, but 9 and 10. We go into tier 5. Leading off tier 5 is Nick. Projected points, 90.29. He had $178, which was 10th most, so he's a little under his projection. What I love, James Cook. This is going to fall into the same camp as Breece Hall for me. One of the most significant picks, good or bad. I can just remember it off the top of my head because it's one of those things where it's like, what are we doing, guys? $30 for James Cook. I mean, literally, we had people like Swift and Pollard go for more. I don't know why. James Cook is pretty good. I'm not like, if Allen is that scary, James Cook had the most running back opportunities in the red zone last year. He came through with them. He got paid. I don't know. I don't understand it. He was drafted for $9 less than Pollard. That's like truly LOL. Hate, I think just the construction of this team, there's just no stars. Like outside of Bowers and I guess like Cook, I just don't see where the stars are here. It's a lot of depth pieces. I think Mitch said it best. He has a lot of teams that he's built similar to this. And I think the league is kind of fairly sour on some of these guys, which is like Jerry Jeudy, Moore, Jones, ETN, Kupp. I just don't know if this doesn't work. It's not going to totally work out for everybody. Next team on the list, we have Cody at 12. Projected points per game is 90.29. He had the 12th most amount of money, so he's right on track. A player that I love for him is Justin Jefferson for $47. One of these things is we're doing it again, boys. I don't know why Justin Jefferson hits the open market undervalued. He finished second last year in wide receiving scoring and was given a cheap price that year. He had a hamstring, I guess, that held him back, but that shouldn't demote him under $50. I just don't know what we're doing. What I hate, Golden for $19. I see the theory. Golden is the only healthy wide receiver. He's a first-round pick for the Packers, which is rare. He's fast as shit. However, considering all the proven Packer pass catchers got drafted for, Dobbs was $2, Reed was $4, and Kraft was $8. I'm not entirely sure what makes Golden for $19 that significant and why he deserves that, especially as a rookie. 13th on this list, we have Dill. Dill's points projected was 88.04. That is a full 2 points below Cody. He had $155, which is 13th, so he's right on his marks. What I love for him, Jonathan Taylor for $48. For the talent level, this is a fantastic deal. There is a world where he's the absolute engine of the team, where he has one of those kind of seasons, This team would be wise to not want Daniel Jones or Richardson to be the core part of the offense, and if that's the case, this is the way it goes, and Jonathan Taylor is the spoon that serves the drink. What I hate, and I already talked about James Cook, and I talked about it over the weekend, Tony Pollard for $39. If both the player and the price, I just hate the player and I hate the price. For how late this was, it feels like a situation in which Dill had to get a guy that was nearing the end of the tier, but to spend $39 on Pollard, he's more expensive than Cook, Kamara, Chuba, Hall, and Monty, and all of those guys finished better than him last year, and he's more expensive than Ken Walker, who in 6 less games finished 2 spots behind Pollard last year. It's a new QB, I understand that. It's still a very understaffed Titans team, and I guess you could tell yourself that Pollard's going to be that guy. I just don't think so. I think if given the chance, I bet that Dill would happily take the other names listed in exchange for this $39 price. Those names, again, being less expensive than Pollard: Cook, Kamara, Chuba, Hall, and Monty. God damn. Lastly, the last team on this list, Mike, 14th. Projected points per game, 87.54, about 0.5 of a point below Dill. He had $186, 8th most. This is probably the most significant fall from the amount of money to the results. What I love, and it was kind of hard, I'm sorry, Mike, One of his 4 $1 receivers are going to hit, and I really do mean that this is going to be kind of a significant thing. I can expect some major value out of Leggett, Kirk, Pierce, or Lockett. Leggett right off the bat with Coker going on IR. Hunter Renfrow is going to take over the slot. I probably put the Leggett in the slot there. He could easily deliver more than $1 value. In fact, he probably should. Kirk is going to be one of those guys that is like a lunch pail kind of player where you just put him out there and you're going to get those 10 points and you're not know how it's going to happen, but it's going to happen. Same thing with Alec Pierce. I think if the offense does work for the Colts, and that's a big if, Pierce could be a beneficiary. I think he might be a better wide receiver than Michael Pittman. And then Lockett, depending on what kind of veteran presence that the Titans need, he's outside of Calvin Ridley, could be a guy that just gets open and is just kind of like, again, ugly points, but gets there. And if he can get some of these guys to hit, he has some added trade value as he tries to correct his team. Things that I hate, combined $20 for on the Jags backup backfield. Like, we really just don't know what the value is here between Tank and Tootin. But let's just say that ETN doesn't relinquish the job as a starter. We're $20 deep in backup running backs for the Jags, a team that doesn't have a solid line. Sure, this could be a committee in which all one of these, Tank and Tootin and ETN all have a role, but that still is $20 invested in a committee that's on the Jags. It's a little pricey and not exactly what you'd want to have. And again, I think Mike was, a team that kind of like had the draft not fall the way he wanted to, and it's kind of evident with the $20 backup draft of the Jags. But with that said, that wraps up our 14 teams. I'll go again from the top of our tier 1. Tier 1 is myself alone. Tier 2, we have Red, Jaden, and Brandon. That's the 2, 3, and 4. 5th, starting off tier 3, is Mitch. 6th is Alec. 7th is Jesse. 8th is Tanner. Tier 4, 9th is Peyton. 10th is Cal. Tier 5, 11th is Nick. 12th is Cody. 13th is Dill. And 14th is Mike. That wraps up your draft recap, your draft grades. Thank you all for listening. I'll be posting this on the YouTube if I can figure that out. I certainly will. If you'll be listening to this, you'll be hearing it on the YouTube, so obviously I figured it out. But thank you all. We're back, baby. Podly Weekly is going to be coming back as it usually does. And can't wait to see what waivers deliver over the night. And we're only 2 days away from actual football. That matters. So with that said, go Chargers. Fuck the Chiefs. Except for Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey. Hope they do well. And I'll talk to you guys later.